Drake pear spinner. Hi, I'm Ed McCoy with Hawkins Outfitters, and today we're going to tie one of my go-to dry fly patterns for our gray drake hatch. Typically that hatch starts in middle month of May. It'll carry on through June. Sometimes it's overlooked, but on a lot of our rivers these bugs occur in high densities, which makes it a very formidable fly to use during an emergence or a spinner fall. Basically what we're going to do here is start out with a size 12 Tiamco hook, and I'm going to use wine colored thread, and when we combine this material with our deer hair, it'll give us a pretty neat effect. So basically we'll just start right behind the eye, wind our thread on towards the back, and then from this starting point we're going to start by tying in our tail, which is basically just moose body hair or moose mane, whatever you have available. Just want to get 4 or 5 fibers for the tail. Pluck out that under fur, rid of any short ones. And we'll just throw them in our stacker real quick, kind of even up the tips. Little taps. We're going to just tie this right off the back. So for me, basically what I'm looking for is a little bit more than the length of the hook for my tying point. So I'm going to put this up here somewhere around 1 1/4, 1 1/2 times the length of the hook will work. I'll just tie that in. Then I'm going to carry this material forward to kind of keep some consistency in the body. Stop just short of the eye, trim that off. And then I'm just going to wrap up just a little bit short of the eye of the hook. And this is where I'm going to tie in my deer hair to make the body of this fly. So any deer hair will work. If you want a little more gray to it, select your hide or skin that has a little more gray hair. This has kind of got a little bit more of a tan hue to it, which I find typically resembles most of the bugs that on the waters that I'm fishing. So we're just going to take off a little chunk of this. And we'll comb out the under hair. So you'll have to play around with getting the proportions right, how much hair to use. I usually go by feel. So I'm going to look at the end of this hair, like kind of eyeball it, and that looks good enough. So I'll go ahead and stack the ends of this. Looks good. Pull out any super short ones. Okay. So now I want the tips of this hair to kind of creep back into that tail. So I'm going to kind of line it up just about the bend of the hook. Switch hands here. We're going to go around with 1 1/2 turns and squeeze that hair. Let it flare a little bit. This will help lock your body in. And we'll just brush this forward, kind of get it out of the way. Now I'm going to grab all that hair in my fingertip, and working backwards, we're going to wrap the thread around the hair, trying not to let it flare. We're going to stop at the end, 1 full turn. Now I'm going to counter wrap and intersect my wraps to give it a segmented look coming forward. And that's that. So now what we'll do is go ahead and trim this excess hair out. This is where fine tip scissors come in handy. And don't cut your thread. Alright, so that'll give us a nice clean look to the body. So basically what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and cover up this hair, make a thread base. I'm going to come right back to about where I want my wing to be tied in, which is about an eighth of an inch back from the eye. So for the wing, what we're going to use is called Parapost. It's a hairline product. You can use high vis, you can choose any color you want. I'm going to use orange. At least for me, I can see orange the best at low light. Typically spinner falls are in the evening. Sometimes you'll have them during the middle of the day if it's cloudy and drizzly. I'm going to use 2 strands of this, kind of double up a little bit. So we're just going to tie this in. Couple good tight wraps, make sure it's secure. Trim out the excess. Alright, then we'll cover up this with some thread. Nice and even. Okay, so now we have a post. And you can see now that this fly is starting to gain some character. Alright, so the next step will be to select our hackles, and we're going to do a spinner pattern. So I'm actually going to gauge the hackles a little bit bigger than I normally would for a standard parachute, primarily because I want that profile of this fly to have more of a wing shape to it, or look. So we're going to come in here. And I always use 2 feathers. Feels like it makes the hackle stand up better. So what I'm using is a grizzly hackle from Whiting. That looks good. And if it's your first fly and you haven't tied any yet, basically what I'll do is just grab a pair of feathers, come in, and do a half turn around the base of that post and see where they kind of line up. So these are too short. Once I get the right size, I don't know if you guys can see this here, it's just a hackle gauge. If I know I'm going to tie a dozen or 2, I'll just sit down and gauge out all my hackles, throw them in a pile, and make the process quicker. So these look a little bit better. Alright, so we're going to pair up the ends and the base. And then I'm going to find the point where the feathers really want to stand up, and I'm going to strip the rest off, exposing the bare stem. Something like that. Alright, now we're going to come in behind our post here. Do a couple of turns behind it and around the base, kind of help keep this thing standing up a little bit. We're going to tie these in right behind the post. Now if you notice, I'm leaving a little bit of that bare stem exposed. I do have a reason for that. Trim that out. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, this is an option that's basically not required, but sometimes will make it easier. I'm just going to tighten that in there. We're going to take both these feathers at the same time. We're going to wrap around that base, working our way up. And what I'm trying to do is build a base on that post for our feather to splay out on. Now we're going to wrap back down towards the body, bouncing the feather at the same time. I'm going to hackle this a little heavier than I normally would, because I am going to trim some of these hackles out when we're done. Probably 5 or 6 turns. Forgot to move our thread there. Okay. Come in and just pinch that thread against the hackle. Pull it back a little bit. Wrap it in there nice and snug, locking it in. Now if you want to make sure your fly doesn't fall apart, trim your hackle before you whip finish this. It's easier to go back and correct any errors. Alright, that looks good. So now I'll let this go, move that out of my way. Now I'm just going to come in and whip finish this fly here. Alright, so now we have all the key ingredients basically on this fly. So what we're going to do is come in now, kind of clean up this hackle, trim our post. Height is optional. I want to be able to see it a little bit, so I'm going to leave it. Rotate it up, clean it up anywhere it looks like it needs it. It's looking pretty good. There you go. Gray Drake Pear Spinner. Gray Drake Pear Spinner.